So hi, my name is Suvi Lahdenmäki. I live in Helsinki, Finland, and I work as a freelancer, journalist, content manager, and theater producer. And last year I was part of the first No Labels, No Walls Festival's media team. Members consist of Finnish and international organizations and individuals whose current work is in the art and culture or social fields. We organize meetings, workshops, and events. At the moment, there is over 30 organizations and a big group of private individuals in the movement. The second International No Labels, No Walls Festival is on Saturday, 12th of September in Helsinki, Glasgow, and Los Angeles. The theme for festival is We Are One, and it brings together people and communities online in 3 countries during the same day. Isn't that correct? Yeah. So, and now we have an international panel discussion on self-care in the time of the coronavirus and beyond. What does self-care mean? How do I do it? Why it is important? How we can all manage our stress and fears to maintain a perspective of trust and hope. And we have, I think, 7 speakers of performance here today. They will talk about self-care from their point of view. And you can all ask questions in the chat box for the people. So the interactive discussion here. Or do you want to say something?
So, Suvi, the first person speaking is going to be Dr. Neasley. Correct me if I'm saying the pronunciation wrong. Janelle?
Yes, Janelle October, not Dr. Janelle October.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was the one I messed up. Okay.
She prefers Janelle October.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So take it away, Janelle.
Oh, take it away, just like that. Yes, I am
let
not.
me put your bio, Janelle. I'm going to put your bio right now in there.
Alrighty. My family calls me Dr. Mom, but I'm not by any ways have the credentials behind me to be a doctor. I'm a marriage and family therapist by training, but I actually stopped my practice a while back. And now I'm in the preventative care. So I love talking about how to do self-care because it's so important. And one thing I like to teach people when I become acquainted with them is a simple hand model of the brain in terms of stress. And what happens is, and it's going to be a very quick example. If you want a bigger link or a more detailed link, just email me. This is our brain. So this part right here is the frontal cortex of our brain. If we were to open it up, this is still the frontal part of our brain. This is where all of our logic, where our reasoning comes in, how we make good choices. That's that part of the brain. But this part of the brain, this is an example of our brain stem, which controls like your breathing, your respiration, your eyes blink, things that you don't have control over. But then this middle part where your thumb is, that's the limbic center. That's where like the amygdala is. That's where your fight or flight response is. And that's what happens, for example, right now when we're stressed. This part of our brain is activated. And so when this is activated, this actually flips. Because when this is down, this thinking part of our brain can control the stress response. But when our brain is flipped, if you've ever been in an argument with someone and you've said things that you really regret saying, or you just can't think and you're mad and you're angry and everybody's working on your nerves, it's because you're not in that thinking part of your brain. An example, if we were to go back in time when we lived with like lions and tigers and we were amongst predatory animals, you don't want to use this part of your brain when you're being chased by a lion.
Nope.
You really don't. You don't want to have to be going, okay, do I run? Do I go to the left? Do I go? You just want to be able to have this limbic part of your brain that's going to just like instantly, you're just going to fight or flight. You're just going to run. You don't have to think about it. You just do it. So that part of our brain, it's a good part of our brain. But unfortunately, we can't survive in that part of our brain for very long. We need to, our body doesn't have the ability to regulate that amount of cortisol, which is what's going to be flowing through your body in order to keep yourself safe. And let's go back in the prehistoric time, or when we were being chased by lions and things, an example of how to bring the brain back down is if there was a watering hole and you were running and running and running, and all of a sudden you saw this pond and you were thirsty and you stopped to get a drink, your brain is actually going to say to itself, wow, I must not be in danger because she's taking water. Because if you were in danger, if you're still being chased by a lion, guess what? You're not going to exist anymore. The lion's going to eat you. So drinking water when you're really stressed out, just having something to sip on. I used to use it in my practice all the time. When my clients would come in, they kind of knew, just bring some water in with them, have it sit down, because it helps regulate the body. It helps tell the body that it's not a stressful situation. Also, when you're in that fight or flight response, another thing that happens, your heart rate starts to go because all of your blood is going to the extremities. It's going to run from that lion. So when you take deep breaths, everybody always hears, oh, do your breathing exercises. Well, there's neurological research done that it does work, because again, what you're saying to yourself is, no, I'm not being chased by a lion. If my brain is saying, wow, she's taking really deep breaths, the lion must be not there anymore. And today, for example, this coronavirus, this quarantine, it's stimulating that same part of your brain, that fight, flight, or freeze. We're in this, the lion, we can't see it, but it's still there, and our brain is still responding to it in that same exact way. So making sure that you're taking deep breaths, making sure that you're staying hydrated are really good ways to bring that brain back down into a functional way of being. And the second part of our brain, okay, this is this part of our brain, but there's also a brain that's in our stomach, in the intestinal area. And that's why when you feel something, you're like, wow, I really feel it in my gut. Or when you're getting ready to make a presentation to a bunch of people, your stomach gets all butterflies. Or you find that you're nauseous, or you find that, sometimes when people have irritable bowel syndrome, because it's related to mental health. And 95% or so of our serotonin, which is our good, happy feeling kind of chemical in our brain, is made in our intestinal tract. And so there's a lot of evidence that this is our second brain, is our stomach. And so when we're stressed out, okay, when you're stressed out, again, the lion's chasing you, it's not time to sit down and have a big meal, because your digestive system, all the blood is moving away from your digestive system. And so you're not going to be digesting your food properly. And that's when you end up with like bloating and gas and nauseous, and I just don't feel like eating. But we know we all do eat comfort foods during this time. So my encouragement to you is, again, make sure you're hydrated, taking sips of water, learning how to do deep breathing. I do the 747 with my clients. It's the 7, you take a breath, inhale for 7 seconds, hold for 4, and blow out for 7. And blow out like you're blowing out a big birthday cake, because you want to expel all the old stuff so that you could take in more air. And then do that about 3 times, because if you do it more than that, you might hyperventilate and pass out. Because if you don't lower your cortisol levels, I'm not sure if everybody knows, there's a study called ACEs, ACES, it's Adverse Childhood Experiences. They've traced that a child that has 4 or more, or when they were a child, if they had 4 or more adverse experiences, they are more likely to develop type 2 diabetes, cancer, hypertension, you name it, it goes on. So stress impacts the body in huge, huge ways. So being able to regulate your stress, yes, we are under a very stressful time, so making sure that you take care of yourself. I often advise my clients to not only do social distancing, but do media distancing. Distance yourself from the news, because this stuff is getting stored in our brain, and it's just, all it's doing is feeding that fear part of our brain that wants to escape. Because the coronavirus is just like back in the day, it's the lion. but unfortunately we can't see it, but our body still responds in the exact same way. So going back to our digestive system, if you can eat light meals. My family is on like a 2-meal-a-day thing now because we're not moving a lot. You don't need that much food. We know what happens when we eat too much food. We store it as fat. And I also encourage my clients and my family to not have your big meal at nighttime, because if you're stressed and if you're sleeping, it's just more work on the body. The body's job at night is to detoxify itself. Oh, and just a little bit of wisdom. Our body has a lymphatic system from about here down. Our brain has no lymphatic system. Our brain cleans itself while it sleeps. The beta amyloid plaque we see in Alzheimer's patients gets cleared out when we sleep. And so make sure you're getting your 8 hours of sleep at night. Restful sleep, good sleep. And it's not sleep that's done with melatonin. It's not sleep that's done with Ambien, because those kind of melatonin is really for people who, like, let's say if I was to fly to Finland and I had jet lag, that's an appropriate time for melatonin. But Ambien doesn't allow you to have the proper deep sleep that our body needs in order to let that chemical wash over our brain to clear out all the plaque. Hopefully this has had some good nuggets of information that you guys want. I think now we could open it up for, I guess, questions.
Thank you so much. That was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
May I comment something to that one?
Sure.
You agree with the keeping hydrated, but I would like to remind that if one sweats, you lose salt. And so it's important to keep also the salt levels on the correct level in your body, because being oversalted or undersalted is possibly fatal too.
Yes, definitely. And being overhydrated is fateful. It's not good for you. So you can actually have too much water. But thank you. Yes, making sure that your electrolytes and your sodium are all on a par. Really, really.
Yeah, I had a question, as far as like, since we're home all the time and, even if we're, after this is over, as far as movement, like would you have any recommendations to, for like, movement or anything like that besides just, nutrition?
Yeah, I mean, I try to incorporate, like, for example, we're all going to be using the restroom hopefully throughout the day, and just making it a habit, like when after you've gone, you just do something that's going to make like a major muscle burn. I use this when I talk with my patients that have type 2 diabetes, is to, like, for example, you do squats until your thighs burn, or you do wall push-ups until your biceps burn. And what you're doing is you're getting your body to ask for energy and to use energy. And I think later on, you're going to hear some ways of creatively being able to move in your home. You could use your chair, you could use all kinds of things just to create more movement. And also, they say that sitting is the new smoking. So if you have the ability, like I bought something for my desk, that if I'm at my desk too long, I can actually move my computer up on this little stand. So I can move my computer up so now that I'm standing. So, finding ways to do things that doesn't require sitting all the time. Hopefully that answers your questions. And I think there's someone coming on later. Erin is going to speak about creative ways to move at home.
Well, thank you so much. Wow, that was great. Yeah.
That was, thank you, Janelle.
Thank
You know, I have a million questions, but I will refrain myself. Oh, but one quick little thing, some quick tips on supplements, especially since we are indoor so much. Are there supplements we definitely should be taking, to kind of help?
I would actually say that, because one of the vitamins that gets secreted in our urine when we're stressed out, our body uses up a lot, is your vitamin C and your vitamin B complex. They're okay to take without having like me or your doctor read your blood panels, because they're not stored in the body. if anybody has ever taken vitamin B or more vitamin C, you just know that your pee is really orange because you're just going to pee it out. So making sure that you're drinking your body, your right amount of water. So there's something called the stress B complex, and it's really good to take during this time because we're all under stress and our body is using it much more than need be. And you'll find that sometimes if you're low in Bs, it can affect your mood. For example, when I work with clients, even now and before in my practice, I would always ask them to have their B12 levels drawn, and also their D3, but that's a different one. But B12 levels drawn, because sometimes if your B12 levels are too low, you can have some, depression. So especially if you're vegan or vegetarian, you definitely need to have vitamin B12. And if you are going to take vitamin Bs, I typically, for myself and the clients that I work with, I use the sublingual ones. It's one that'll it's either a tablet or it's liquid form, and it goes underneath your tongue. Because just like, when someone has a heart attack, they put that pill under their tongue, it helps them. It goes right into your bloodstream, as opposed to having to go through your stomach acids, and it gets depleted. There's not as much of an impact when it goes through your stomach. So vitamin B complex. Thanks, Neasley. That was what I had on my notes, but I didn't get it. Yeah, sprays are really good. And then there's some supplements that are actually coated. They're enteric, or I think I'm saying the wrong word, but then so it'll pass through the stomach and goes right into the intestinal tract, which is where most of your nutrients is absorbed.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I apologize as I'm not going to be able to stay. You're welcome.
Well,
I have some prior engagements I have to attend to.
No problem. Hopefully you'll come back. We're every Monday, so let your people know it's a welcome for anybody. And we're going to have this big online festival. Maybe you want to do a self-care, nutrition kind of thing for the festival. We'd love to have you.
Welcome. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks, Neasley.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. See you soon.
Our next
Bye-bye.
person is Pia, and Pia's bio is going to be group chat. It is.
It is already. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Nazal. Thank you very much. Sorry, I would have loved to tell you that I really enjoyed your talk, but yeah, so basically I'm going to look a little bit at self-care from an adult education and lifelong learning perspective. And first of all, for me now, thinking of the whole pandemic, I think it's really important to just really keep it in the day. And so whatever I do in terms of self-care, if I can just, and I'm talking about learning to self-care, it's important to just, keep the focus in the day. So I think it's really important to be aware of the perspective that I have on life and on whatever I do. It's important to be gentle with myself, to let go of perfectionism, that because I make a mistake, that I'm a bad person, to really accept myself as who I am right here, right now, and to start slowly, so that I can't expect miracles overnight, that if I haven't done something ever before, I can't expect to be perfect right tomorrow. So I think it's really important to know my boundaries, my physical, social, and emotional boundaries, and if I do need help, to reach out for help, be it professional or be it call my neighbor or my friend or whoever, but not to having to stay alone with whatever problem I might be having. I hope somebody will stop me. I put my time on now, so I hope I won't run too much over. So in terms of learning, if you think in terms of learning, we learn all our lives. It's very much connected to our lives, and we learn how to learn, we learn to know how, and we learn to live. And self-care in that theory is based in the learning to live, and self-care is actually part of the art of living. So it is, if you look at the Maslow pyramid, it's quite up high, because it's not basic needs. It is also basic needs. It's also about survival, but the self-care that I'm talking about is also about going a bit further. It was talked about it before, the learning to survive. And you know, you have the tiger or whatever, and you grow up in a dysfunctional family, or in a family with alcoholism or addiction or whatever. It's basically the same as if you were constantly running away from a tiger. You have to constantly be aware of what you're doing, what are they doing. You have to put out the antennas. You're walking on eggshells to make sure that nobody is being too upset. You have to deny your own feelings and your own needs, and other people are always at the center of your attention. So what we learn early onwards, if we grow up in a family like that, are those patterns of action and interpretation that we just use, that we live through our lives. Throughout our lives, we live according to those patterns. And so, as it was explained earlier about the brain, if we are afraid, you know, we can't use our brain for learning. So if we're constantly in a situation that scares us, that affects our learning ability, and in terms of lifelong learning and adult education, that is detrimental, because people who haven't learned, who are not capable of learning, won't be able to educate themselves in any way, or in many different ways. They won't be able to do what they could do if they had the capacity, or the ability. But in terms of learning in general, it is always important to have an open mind, or to keep an open mind. And if you're afraid, usually the mind is closed. And if you're afraid, you say no, rather than, okay, let's have a look what's going on. So, but the good news is that it's never too late to learn any of that. So even if we didn't grow up in a family where we were supported and encouraged, it's never too late to actually learn those things, and to learn also to care for ourselves. So in order to learn, we also need to practice. We have to focus on it, and we have to hang in there, and we can't just give up. We can, and that is what many people do. You know, it doesn't work instantly. We don't get immediately what we want, and then we give up. But, you know, learning to learn means also to really to learn to focus, and to just, you know, put everything else out and just be with whatever I'm learning. And through the struggle that comes with it, through the constant practice, we can start to experience joy also in learning. Now, as I said before, it's step-by-step process. Whatever we learn, be it walking, or be it playing the piano, or singing, or dancing, we always build on what we have learned before, and we need to practice. And we forget that as adults. You know, as adults, we often think, oh yeah, you know, I should know it right now. But, you know, we have to remember that when we start something new, and if it is self-care, we need to remember that babies also start walking, you know, very, very painfully in the beginning. So, and we need for learning, we don't just need our own perception, our self-perception. We also need the perception of someone else. That's why we need teachers or coaches or friends who tell us, hey, you know what, this is really good, but you know, you could do it better if you did this or that. So, but again, to be able to take that on board, we have to have an open mind, and that we can learn too. So just to reiterate, we have existing skills, we build a routine through doing it. Things become automatic, and they're shifted under the consciousness, and we do them without thinking. So we just do our thing again and again, and nothing happens, and everything is fine. And if we keep an open mind, we can then come out of the routines and start to create new things. But if for whatever reason something happens, we have a crisis, that's when we head against the wall in our little routines. And the crisis usually then is an opportunity for us to rethink and wake up and think, hey, what's going on? And that is what we do what we can do right now, also during the time of Corona crisis. We can look at, okay, what's going on. So self-care: physical, spiritual, social, emotional, and intellectual. Intellectual, how can I take care of myself intellectually? I can learn something new. I can read something that requires a little bit of effort. I can reflect on whatever. I can listen to a discussion. I can solve a math problem. There are many ways of using our brains other than just flicking through Facebook. The physical was all already talked about. Eat, drink enough water, exercise, sleep when you're tired, wash, see a doctor if you feel anything, if you have a problem, take your medication, set your timer in order to take it on time if it's medication that you need to take regularly. Social self-care is very important. The interaction and communication with other people, be it at home with my husband or over Zoom with you people, I need to listen and I need to speak my mind. I need to say what I need. I need to be able to say no. These are all things that many people take for granted, but many people need to learn those things because they didn't grow up in families where all those things were done. Hugging is really important. If you don't have anyone to hug yourself or hug your teddy bear. I sometimes hug my teddy bear because it's nice to hug him. I'm talking to my plants and pet. I don't have a pet anymore, but I'm talking to my plants much more than I used to. And I heard that that's okay now during Corona, as long as they don't talk back, but so far so good. Call someone and ask them how they are doing, or ask them for help if you need to. But, reach out to people. Don't sit there on your own in your own head. Come to meetings, to Zoom meetings, or call someone. And take space and respect space. I think that's really important. Say, I need to say to my husband, I need some time out now. I put on my headset or I put on the earplugs in order to have space. And, that is also something we have to learn. Emotional self-care. How are you doing? Fine. Yeah, what does that mean? It's like, what are you feeling and what are you doing with your feeling? Do you feel fear? Do you feel joy? Are you bored? Are you annoyed? And what do you do when you have those feelings? Do you sit with them and breathe and feel how you are and where does it come from? Or do you run from them? Do you drink or do you take some drugs or do you run out, go shopping? There's so many ways of how we run away from our feelings, thinking that we're caring for ourselves. But we need to really also acknowledge the things that are going on within us and then learn to communicate. But even knowing how I feel is not, if I haven't learned to express my feelings in my family of origin, I won't be able to do it just like that. Spiritual self-care. Where do I get hope and meaning from, especially in times like that? I pray and meditate in the mornings. I write a gratitude list. I do have a higher power. It's not related to a religion, but I do believe in something bigger and stronger and better than me. And that helps me. Other people don't, and that's okay too. But I think it's definitely important to have an open mind to explore the idea and maybe to just think, okay, maybe there's something, maybe not. But, just allow the idea into your mind. And what I personally find really important is, and I'm finishing with that, is to develop a routine. I have a routine that I do every day, and within that routine, I create, I feel like it's like a frame in which I then can move freely. And I do certain things on a regular basis, and so that means they keep me sane, they keep me happy, and when I do those things, I can think freely and I can create and I can do whatever I want to do. And so that includes, having a sleeping pattern, choosing my thoughts, as I said earlier, eat, get dressed and washed right, do something worthwhile, rest when I'm tired, exercise, either go out for a walk or dance or whatever, and do something fun, sing or watch a movie or read a book, whatever. But, it is about balance, and it all can be learned. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for listening.
Wow, thank you. Yay.
Thank you so very much, Maria.
All right.
So, are there any questions? Is there time for questions? No.
I don't know. I mean,
there isn't actually.
What? Next one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
just one thing. Did you put the
PowerPoint? I'm gonna attach Pia's PowerPoint that she sent.
Hello.
And that's
hello. I'm here.
So the next person is going to be Riku. So Riku's going to be talking about stigma. And unmute him.
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Riku. Okay, so you've got about 10 minutes and you're going to be talking about stigma.
Yeah. Okay. This has been my lifetime opportunity to speak about stigma against mental health illness. And it has been very interesting to me. I've been through media and all kinds of different meetings that I've been doing with stigma. And in those meetings, I have been very active, and also I have been sending people the message that they had to learn about the stigma against mental health illness. And that is very important to me, that that is understood by the people, that mental illness is not a bad illness. It has to be understood by people, that they can see that it's not a disease, it's a richness. And it's also very touching to me to be mental health illness person, because I see the light and I see the passion to speak for the people about the illness, and I want to get rid of it as any other person in this planet. And I am also sending a message in my music to avoid stigma, and I want people to understand that they can hold on to a thought that they can be saved by the stigma, and be saved by a person, and also understand that you're not alone in this world as a mental health person, and you have to see that it's not just a disease. It has to be very, very touching and very emotional way to express yourself, and it has to go further in your mind, that you can be saved from the stigma.
Thank you, Riku. That was really great. And you said, thank you.
Thanks,
Riku.
Riku, how do
Thanks,
people, when they see your music, how do people react to that? Just a brief question. Like, how do people, because we've seen you perform so much, so well in the communities, like, what does that give you when you do your music? Is it, you get to, like, as far as the response, what you get to express, all of those things?
well, it gives me a power, and it gives me a way to create something in my mind, and get people touched, and also give them own opportunity to listen, to get something special from it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Riku.
Thank you so much.
All right. So,
Thank you.
yay.
Thank you.
So, does anybody else have anything really quick to add for Riku before we move on? Okay. Well, you always can ask in the text, and I'm gonna do this email list so you guys can connect and keep emailing each other. But the next person we've got is Aaron. Hello, Aaron. Let me unmute you, and I think Aaron's gonna help us get up a little bit and move. So we're excited.
That is absolutely right. Hi, everyone. How are you today?
Great. And her bio is in the, let me see if I put it here. Yes, it's in the chat. Her bio's in the chat.
All right. Well, let me apologize. I had issues with my Wi-Fi over here, but we're back and we're ready to go. So yes, my name is Erin Young, and I have been a personal trainer, health educator for the last about 15 years or so. And so one of the things that I like to focus
Erin, hold on one second. There's a little bit, you're frozen a little. Oh, there you go.
Okay, yes, my Wi-Fi wanted to be strange, and apparently this is what it looks like on a Monday, but we're gonna press on anyway. So, as I was saying, I'm a health educator as well as a fitness trainer for the last 15 years or so, and so I focus on being able to give people practical examples about ways to stay energized, ways to stay active. And so today we're gonna talk a little bit, but then we're also gonna do some movement, because that's where everything is in. Everything is going to be in being able to actually, apply it. So, one of the things that, especially right now during this season of dealing with the coronavirus, a lot of people aren't able to go out. I don't know how they are there, but our gyms are closed, and, just being able to maintain distance has been something that keeps people inside. And so, just some facts that are helpful with activity. Obviously, there are a lot of benefits cardiovascularly as well as mental health, but at the same time, various studies have been done that has proven that with being able to exercise has been great to get the antibodies in your system up, and also to reduce inflammation. So those are some things that are going to be very helpful as far as being able to keep you healthy and away from catching the coronavirus. Another great fact that's going to be helpful. It was mentioned, one of the things that we like to talk about is, sitting is a new smoking. And, if you think about some of the major health pushes, within the last 50 years, smoking was one of those big things, but now it's sedentary lifestyle. And that's basically having to sit down more than 8 hours a day. So now that we're kind of cooped in, it's easier to be in that situation. And then there's that whole added thing of a refrigerator, it's always in front of you. When you're going to work and everything like that, and you're busy, you're doing things, you're not necessarily sitting in front of the refrigerator all day. So it's not so much of a threat. And, eating is good, but at the same time, you want to keep your body in a place of being able to continue to move, because that keeps your body's fluids moving, your blood circulating, oxygenating your system and everything. So anyway, enough talking, and I'm going to show you guys some things. How does that sound? Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to move back a bit. Can you guys still hear me okay? Okay, I'll just use my outside voice. So like I said, cardiovascular, which is dealing with your heart and how your body pumps the blood through your system. You're going to want to do a lot of movement. And so static movements, where you're standing in place and you're kind of jogging in place, that's always a good given. So regardless of what your space is, if you're in an apartment or not, that's going to be a good thing. You want to move it up a little bit, kind of get some things going where you can kind of get some more dynamic actions in. And what I like to do is to kind of incorporate multiple things at one time. So yes, jogging is good, getting your cardio, But if I wanted to kind of get some more action going, you know, you can do some things where, you know, you're going side to side, you know, move it in that kind of direction, you know, or you can get those knees up, you know, that kind of a thing. And mix it up so that you're actually, you know, you create an opportunity for your body to move, you know, and movement is going to do so much more for you. The other thing is, if you have a step or anything like that, like I have actual steppers, and this is something that's going to be really good. And yes, I love it. People are standing right now. That's what we like to see. Steppers are good too because you can kind of get in the movement of going up, up, down, down, up, up. And it just creates some different opportunities, you know, for you to move. And I'm just going to go through a few different things so you can see. I love it. You can continue on whichever one makes you happy because movement, you know, my company is called Just Move for that whole purpose. It's just move. However you do it, just go ahead and do it. The other thing is sitting down. Like I said, the sedentary lifestyle is a bad thing. So, you know, we all like the television, or, you know, sometimes people say the telly. And what do? We sit, right? We sit, we change the channel, a movie turns into the next show, and, you know, we're there for a lot of time. So to kind of change it up a little bit, what I like to do is you can turn your chair to the side, and you can do a series of different things. One would be to come back to the end of the chair, lean back, and you can do some bicycles with your legs, like that. I would make sure that you don't have a chair that's rolling, because that would be bad. But yeah, you know, kind of get some bicycles going. And I'd say, you know, do it for a certain amount of time, say 30 seconds or so. Or even if you want, you know, in the middle of commercials, every time there's a commercial, you can find an activity to do. Another one is on the ground. You can kind of walk out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, back and forth. And just kind of get that going. That's going to be good for your bum on your backside. It's also going to be good just for your abs. Another thing you can do, which is sometimes a trouble spot for a lot of people, is get your right underneath your triceps going. So at that same edge of your seat, you're going to walk out and just go straight down. You don't want your knees to ever go past your toes, but you're doing dips. So, I mean, you know, there's so many opportunities to be able to have, you know, gym-like activities, gym-like, you know, improvements and gains right there in the comfort of your home. And so just trying to provide opportunities for people to do some things that will actually help to strengthen you. Some good items that I've noticed. This is my trusty ball. I love these things. You can use them for so many different things. But what I want to show you, maybe you don't have weights, and there are different things you can use around the house that's going to be helpful. So, you know, your typical 1 gallon water. How many of you guys realize it's 8 pounds? So I could either be doing this, you know, with my water, or some different things, you know, getting some weight things going, or, you know, it's the same thing. This is my weight, you know, this is my ball weight, you know, I can do some different things with this. And it's the same thing. Weight is weight, you know, however it's shaped, it's going to do the same thing for your body. Same thing with this. This is a good old chicken soup, which, you know, obviously people like to use, especially when they're not doing well. 3 pounds, you know, same thing. You can do different things with it. And that's similar to, you know, something like this. Also 3 pounds. It looks a little different, but, you know, the kettlebell is 3 pounds. This one is, at least. And, you know, a few other things I can show. You know, just talking about things that are going to be beneficial for your body, and trying to get some practical methods in there to keep you going. And, you know, the other thing that's really helpful as far as just the why behind it, I think when we think about fitness, we think about, you know, losing weight, but so many other things are beneficial for us. Like, it was a study that was done that showed that exercise, if you keep an active lifestyle, which, like I said, is over less than 8 hours sitting, It helps to reduce your risk at dying by any cause from 10 to 20%. Now, 10 to 20% is not a good discount sale, but when it comes to your health, how many people are willing to offer that, to keep that deal going? So this right here is going to be, this is a weighted bar, and I use it, same kind of thing. I can do my presses on it, I can do some things that are, for my abs. But say you don't have one of these, another thing you can use is a good old, what does this look like? You got to clean up around the house. How about, screw the top off of it for the broom. Now you have something, it's not heavy, obviously, but it gives you something to be able to get a good full range of motion. You know what I mean? It gets you in the position of being able to do the same type of things. You can stretch with it. And it's just very helpful when it comes to, using what you have so that, being able to have a gym or have, the same type of things aren't something that limits you and limits you from being able to enjoy health at the optimal level. Another thing that I can talk about is just thinking about the benefits. I'm not sure to what extent they have for you all as far as, your ability to go outside and that kind of a thing. I know they say essential services and that type of thing, but coming outside and getting some fresh air, it does a wonder, I think cabin fever is something that's realistic. How many people have kind of experienced that, whether it's people in your house, you can love them all you want to, but being in the wall for so long, it does something to you. So just being able to go outside, get some good deep breaths in, tighten up on those abs when you do it, and just take a good deep breath, hold it for a few seconds, let it go, do that a good 3 or 4 times. Don't hyperventilate, but, kind of take your time with it, breathe in, breathe out, soak in some sun, that's good vitamin D. And like I said, coronavirus is something that affects you, your respiratory system. So being able to keep a strong respiratory system is going to help you as far as, just in general, but also in decreasing the risk of being affected greatly by it. So I have a few more minutes left, but I'm going to open up to questions because I think that's, where the best part is as far as people being able to ask what they want to know, as opposed to, continuing to talk on things that may hit you or may not hit you. So does anyone have any questions that I can answer?
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
God, I'm sweating already.
Does anybody have any questions for anything that has to do with fitness or health? Like I said, I'm a health educator, so I think I can answer quite some of those.
Oh, I have a question because
Sure.
I'm Californian, so we have.
Hey.
We're not like Finnish people. Finnish people, it's California lifestyle. Well, Finnish people are actually pretty healthy, actually too. So, but basically, my question is how do you maintain a social distance if it's crowded, and still do your exercise? Do you have any tips as far as, getting your heart rate up without kind of, being in a crowded area? Besides, yeah.
So outside of the ones that we kind of talked about as far as just in your space, kind of, in either your apartment, backyard, front yard, being able to just, if you have a jump rope, I think that's a good go-to. You can do quite a lot with a jump rope. There's a reason why you see boxers doing that. You know what I mean? You always have it with you. It's not a treadmill, but, it works wonderful. That's a good thing. And then, doing laps around your house. And you know what, I would recommend dancing. That's one of my personal favorites. You get some good music on, and before you know it, you're up, for 20, 30 minutes. You know what I mean? So just being able to be active and get things going, you're gonna enjoy doing. I don't think you have to enjoy everything in life to do it, but if you can and it still is helpful, why not? So, put some music on, go for it, grab someone if they're in your house already, and have a good time. I'm going to give you guys I have a free ebook that I can give you guys. I'll put it in the link. You guys check it out. It has some of the suggestions that I talked about and other ways to connect with me. But, the whole thing is just being active and moving. And, one of the things I like to say is that we like to actively change lives. And so find a way in every day and progress. So Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
You're welcome.
So next is Monique. Monique, you're up. So you've got about 10 minutes.
For sure. Well, I just wanted to thank the last presenter. Thank you so much. I just caught the tail end, but it put me in a very like calm and enthusiastic state. So I really appreciated. Yeah. Thank you so much for your energy.
It comes naturally.
I'm sure. I think that's what part of what allowed me to tap into that. So thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Monique, and I'm really I'm feeling a lot of nervousness right now in my body. And I'm saying that out loud because I think it's important to be attuned my body and what it's asking of me and what it's telling me and what it's wanting from me in this moment. And I'm feeling this like tightness in my stomach and this pounding of my heart in my chest. And so I'm just making a physical note of that, And now I'm getting curious about what it is that my nervousness maybe needs from me, what it is that my nervousness maybe is asking of me. Because I think feelings and emotions hold things that are important. They come up because there's something of importance that wants me to attune to that and nurture and take care of that. And so I think my nervousness maybe wants like a sense of reassurance and calm. Because I didn't prepare anything for today. I usually don't like prepare things in advance. I'm very like improvisational. And so I'm just going to remind myself, I'm going to take a moment to remind myself that it's okay, that I'm adaptable, that I'm changeable, that I can grow and become in every moment, and that the nature of being human is growing and becoming at every moment. And I find myself, especially, in this time, my body experiencing a lot of anxiety, experiencing a lot of uncertainty. And my talk today is about human connection and worthiness. And I think part of human connection and part of worthiness is remembering that the nature of my humanity is that I am adaptable. The nature of my humanity is that I can shift and I can change. And that as a human being, we've gone through, evolution, and that I am a part of that evolution. Therefore, I have that potential to become and to change. That's a thought that helps me, but it doesn't make the anxiety go away. And I think that's another thing to remember, is that although I have intellectual understandings of things, that doesn't mean that doesn't erase the emotional experience that I walk through, and that I have the ability to hold those things. Because I think a part of being human, I think part of being in human connection is being able to hold multiple things at once, to hold intersectionality, to hold multidimensional truths, to hold things that are seemingly complex. Because I don't think being with others or being with self is about just one singular truth. I think it's about the multifaceted truth of being alive. I feel like I'm just saying a lot of words. So I chose to talk about human connection and worthiness because I think those things are very important to me, and I think they're especially important right now. I think with everyone practicing social distancing, it's a time of isolation and time with self, and also a lot of time with others, depending on people's situation. And I think it's reshaping and reconfiguring the ways in which we are with otherness and the ways we are with self. I think, so just like a little background about me, I do oracle card readings, and I also have done Reiki, and I co-facilitate a group at a counseling center. And I love reading about relationships and reading about otherness. I've read Esther Perel. If you don't know her, she's a relational therapist. She's utterly amazing. has been doing that work for over 20 years. I also love Brené Brown. And so I love reading about things that, allow me to tap into some wisdom about how to be with otherness. I love talking about relationships and worthiness. So I just think that this is a very interesting time on multiple levels. It's a very interesting time that we are living in. And so, yeah, I think one of the ways that it's interesting is that it is asking us to rethink about the ways we relate and rethink about the ways that we sit with self. And I think in the past, before everything that happened with the coronavirus, I think, we had accessibility to choosing the moments in which we have time with self and choosing the moments in which we have time with others. And that sense of choice around that has departed for the time as we move through this together. But I think one way it's, while it's taken away our sort of choices around when we spend time with others and when we spend time with self. And I think there's a sense of grief around that. There's a collective grief along with all the other grief that we're all moving through. I think it's also sort of highlighted in the ways that we are and the ways that we are one and the ways that we are together. But I'm by myself, living by myself right now. So there's been a lot of moments of feeling disconnection for me. But I think one way this is highlighted, just like how integral and inescapable human connection is like the fact that we're moving through this together. And I know that's been said like so many times, but the fact that now that we're having to take extra precautions, if you will, around protecting ourselves and protecting others because of us moving through this together, it's really highlighting the fact that we are connected no matter what we do. We're connected. The fact that I have to go out and have to wear a mask, the fact that I have to go and wear protective gear as I go outside, the fact that I have to be mindful of what I touch and where I go and how close I am to people. Those things cause me anxiety, but they also highlight the fact that my actions have an impact on other people and their actions have an impact on me. And I think that as anxiety provoking that is for me, it also highlights this beautiful truth of like what I do and the energy that I put out into the world like has an impact, whether I see that or not, whether I witness that or not, on other people. And I hope that consciousness around that is something that stays in some ways, while I also hope the anxiety around it alleviates as we move and shift through things. Sure. How much time I have, because I'm not really keeping track of time.
I just had a question, Monique, about real quick about the music. So you sing. So how has that helped you, or how does that help you during this time?
I play guitar and I sing. I've been doing that for like 17 years. It's playing my guitar and singing has been like really alleviating, and also allows me to tap into like what sort of my emotions are and what I'm experiencing in the moment. So it allows me to feel, it affords me relaxation, and I think moments where I can tap into my creativity, I think in that particular way, are very vulnerable for me, but also like allow me to tap into moments of relaxation. Yeah.
Thank you, Monique. Thank you so much. Anybody else have any questions for Monique? Yes, hold on. Riku has a question. Yes, Riku?
Yeah, I would like to know how much you do your music. Do you do every day, or just once in a while, or and what kind of emotions you put on your music?
Yeah, I don't do my music every day. I sort of do it moment by moment whenever it calls to me. So if I, like right now, I keep looking at my guitar, so that might be an indication that for me. My body's telling me like, oh, you know, I would like to play guitar. So yeah, I talk a lot of, I mean, when I do music, I do improvisational music. Like I said earlier, I don't like really writing things down all the time. So I improvise music. And it's just, it's whatever my truth is in the moment, that's where I speak from, even when I'm doing it alone. And so it really depends where I'm at. But I talk a lot about, I guess, like, you know, really being aware of what sort of societal dominant narratives are like conditioned within me, and really realizing that those things aren't truth. And that just because I think a thought doesn't mean the thought is true. And how do I get back to the truth, which is for me that all beings are worthy of love, and myself included in that. And so some of the music that I do is around that, the noticing of societal dominant narratives, the noticing that there are conditioning, the noticing that I'm not immune from that, and also getting back to the truth, which is I'm worthy of love.
Oh, thank you, Monique. Yes, all right. So our next,
Monique.
Our next.
Hi.
Oh, yes, our next performer, guest speaker, I'm like in a different, Wendy, a doctor, I'm sorry, let me make sure I get everything correct as I introduce it. Dr. Wendy Ray, her bio is now in the chat. And thank you so much, and we're so excited to hear you. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so X out and then call back in. Okay, perfect. So Wendy's gonna call back in. Then Neasley, are you there?
Let's move forward with Dr. Rick, and Wendy will go after.
Exactly. So Dr. Rick, I'm putting his bio up right now. Let me find it. There it is. And here we go.
Okay, great. Hope everyone can hear me. I'm wondering if I can actually share my screen with everyone. Okay, well, hey, good to be with everybody. So just a brief intro for me. I'm a clinical psychologist, and primarily I work in high stress context. And so a lot of my work is done in places like Syria, different countries in the Middle East, Haiti, places where things can be difficult. So a lot of my work is within disaster situations or civil conflict or just straight all-out war. So the idea of self-care and the lens that I bring is very sort of applied and practical. And so I'm trying to you know, I really can't say it better than the folks who've actually spoken already. It's just been really good for me to hear, and I've been sitting here taking notes in terms of applications and even some of the movement. I'm like, oh my goodness, I have a ton of questions for folks. But I'm gonna try to pull it together into a framework that I think can be helpful. So I'd like to start with just an illustration. So the story that I'd like to just launch with is to help you understand a bit in terms of how stress actually impacts people in ways that they may not realize or know it. The purpose of this is to really raise our self-awareness. So I really like what Monique was talking about and where she was coming from in terms of just that self-awareness piece. So the story is a story about a group of fish, and the fish are new, young, excited, and they launch off into the ocean for the first time, excited about the experiences that they're going to have. And they know that there's dangers out there and predators to avoid, but they're excited about all of the great things that they'll accomplish as well. And so at the end of each day, they gather around for a debrief, talk to each other about the experiences that they've had. And one day, as they're out swimming, they pass a much older, mature fish that just as the fish pass each other, the older, mature fish says to the younger fish, hey, how's the water? It's just a simple greeting, how's the water? And then they swim past each other, nothing more is said. At the end of the day, the younger fish gather around each other to do their debrief, and one of them raises the question, hey, remember that older fish that passed us? He asks, how's the water? What is water? and none of the other fish knew what water was. Now, I like this story because I do think it fits all that we do actually understand in terms of the research about stress and how it impacts us, because what we actually find is stress is a lot like fish who don't see water, meaning we know that when we encounter big stressors and obstacles that it has an impact on us because we feel it. We feel the stress, we feel the tension. But in actuality, what the real issue is for many people is that there are everyday stressors, little stressors that don't necessarily ruin their day. They don't necessarily register it as a big problem, but because they're there all the time, every day, we eat, sleep, and breathe these things in our environment, they habituate to it. And it becomes like fish in water, who are in water all the time, they eat, sleep, and breathe it, so they don't even recognize or know what water is. And that's a really good frame for understanding how actually stress works for us, because most of us think that it's the big COVID-19 context that puts people in the red zone or over the edge. And what I'd like to point out is, well, it's actually your everyday routines that you had before the stress of the COVID hit that actually set you up for the problem. And we'll focus a lot on the big stressors and how we deal with COVID-19 and how do we live in this context. But in actuality, if we don't actually deal with how do you live your everyday life, then we're actually missing a very important part of the puzzle. So your routines and how you do every day, how you actually live, how you work, how you connect and relate to other people. These are the things that if they are not done in a healthy way, they erode your cushion, they erode your reserve, so that when you encounter the big stress seasons like we're currently in, you have no reserve left. And that's what actually pushes people over into the problems. So in order to actually really tackle, how do we do wellness? We actually have to look at how do you actually do life, because that is the full picture. So with that, I'd like to just give you, it's a bit technical, but I hope it to be applied here. What you're looking at is just a stress curve. And generally, it's making a few points. If you can see, the more stress or the more demand that people experience, which is that x-axis on the bottom there, as you go further over to the right, the higher the stress, the higher the demand. And what you see on the y-axis, the performance axis, is how you actually respond to it. And we're actually designed and built to engage and solve problems and deal with demands, so we're built for that. But there's always this finite limit that if you have too much on your plate, then you just don't have the reserves to actually handle it. And then we get into distress. And so that's indicated by anything on your plate that passes that X, that line right down the middle, which the top of it has that X. If you put anything more on your plate, if you have to deal with any more stressors or demands, you don't have the energy, you don't have the time to deal with that on top of everything else that you normally have on your plate. And so we start to see the stress creep in, we start to see the errors happen in terms of the mental lapses, and ultimately we get into that red zone, zone 4 there, where people actually experience anxiety, panic, anger, breakdown, burnout. We absolutely want to get people out of that zone, and the optimal place is actually zone 2. That's what's called optimal stress. That's where we actually thrive and flourish. And why it's not zone 1, even though it's green, is because that's too little stress, too less of a demand. And your brain is not meant for boredom. And so that zone 2 is optimal. And what that can feel like is when you function at about 85, 90% capacity, so that you've got 10, 20% cushion left in case something else gets put on your plate, you feel like you can handle it. That's really the ideal place to be. And if you get into zone 3, though, here's where I want to spend a little bit of our attention. Zone 3, people are really at their full capacity and maybe a little bit beyond their capacity. But the issue with zone 3 is that they don't realize or recognize that they're actually beyond their capacity and now feeling stress, because it's so subtle. This is sort of the chronic everyday stuff that sort of sets us up for this, and then the big stressors come and it pushes us beyond. That's what the COVID-19's context is actually doing, is pushing people who would normally be at that X, living in such a way where I've got a lot to do, but I'm handling it all, but I don't have a lot of cushion. And then we get into this context and it pushes us into that zone 3, but we may not even realize that we're beyond our capacity at this point. So that's what that dotted line means, our intended performance. We think everything is fine because we haven't yet experienced anxiety, panic, anger, and breakdown, but we've actually been beyond our capacity. So part of what I'd like to just spend a moment here is just talking about how then can you recognize when you're maybe just beyond your capacity, but it hasn't registered for you, so that maybe we can increase that self-awareness, and then what are some things that we can do about it? So the hallmark of being just beyond your capacity, but you haven't yet experienced the stress, I want to call attention to a symptom here. We say emotional agitation, and notice anxiety, anxiousness. Now, anxiousness before you feel it is going to really manifest in your sleep pattern. So people have difficulty falling asleep when they lay down to go to sleep, when they've got a bit of elevated cortisol, which is just a stress hormone from being beyond your capacity. When that cortisol is elevated, it takes you longer than 5 or 10 minutes to fall asleep when normally you would. And so pay attention if you find that it takes you 20, 30 minutes to fall asleep or longer. We call that early insomnia. That's your first sign that you're beyond that capacity piece, but maybe you're not experiencing stress yet. Next, people actually start to experience conflict in relation to other people. They start to withdraw from other folks. And really what this is talking about is your tolerance for the things that normally would frustrate you actually shrinks. And so things that you normally would find frustrating, you really experience as frustrating. And the problem is we don't recognize that, hey, our tolerance is shrinking. We think about it in terms of, wow, those people are getting worse. Or, you know, the person who I'm with is actually worse now, or the job that I have is actually more stressful. And it's actually the same. What's changed is your tolerance has actually shrunk for it. And so it's now grating on you even more. And so that's the difficulty in recognizing that. We think other people in other situations are worse, but in actuality, they're the same. It's our tolerance that's changed. Feeling like there's no room inside, everything starts to affect us. No shock absorber. So if you watch a good movie and that good movie has a sad part, it should make you cry. That is what good movies do. They get Oscars for that, making sure that you can experience intense emotion in response to something that maybe is not even real. That's a good movie. But if a commercial on TV is what is causing you to tear up and cry, that means too many things are affecting you and your brain is not able to shut that off and convince you that this is not real. And so that is one of the signs that we're beyond that point as well. Being unable to think, well, everything's important or nothing's important. Part of our brain that gets affected by high stress over time is a part of the brain that helps us to prioritize. What do we do in the moment when there's a crisis or there's a need? Well, that prioritization goes out of the window. And so sometimes people can feel like, I can't even make a simple decision. What do I want to do for dinner? Where do I want to go this weekend? And when you start to get hung up on everyday decisions like that, you feel like your decisiveness is no longer there. And that's one of the signs. When you have difficulty making simple decisions, things that you would normally make, decisions you would normally make, and now you're hung up on this. This is not really a sign of stress necessarily, but I put it here, self-medicating with alcohol, tobacco, drugs, or sex, just because in a COVID-19 context, here's what we have to be mindful of. These things, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, or sex, are instant gratification in activities. When you engage it, you feel better instantly. And your healthiest coping strategies typically don't follow that pattern. Typically, if you engage conversation to understand why you're feeling what you're feeling, you're going to actually experience those feelings a bit more intensely at first. And then you have to just be mindful that, you know, you're able to resolve those things. But instant gratification makes you feel better quickly. And you're sort of setting up a paradigm so that the next time you feel high stress, then you're going to want to actually go for instant gratification as opposed to healthy coping strategies. It's just a learning paradigm. Be mindful of that, because in a COVID context, we're doing a lot of things by Zoom, like this meeting. But the issue with that is you may do your work by Zoom, then you close the computer, and then you become the partner or the spouse or the parent, or you throw yourself into the next activity, and there's no transition. Whereas outside of this context, there's absolutely a transition. You get in a car and you drive to work, you get in the car when you drive home, that's your transition. Those are gone now. So how do you switch out of that work mode quickly? And so these instant gratifications are real lures to help to sort of pull people into, well, there's a quick way to do it, just drink more. And so please be mindful of that. And so with that, I don't want to belabor it too much, but let me just say the last three here. Some people start to experience a lot of intrusive thoughts, meaning it's really hard for them to focus and concentrate. You know, their mind keeps wandering because they really have too many things on their plate or too many worries. When your day is spent trying to get your thoughts back, please be mindful of that. And then feeling mistrustful and paranoid of others or the situation out there, when that really elevates, that's one of the signs. And finally, memory problems. When you're highly stressed over time, your brain changes in some ways where you can no longer remember short-term things. So you never forget your name or where you live, but you do forget things like, you know, did you lock the door when you left the house? Where did you put the keys? And a lot of times when those memory lapses happen, people feel like they have maybe early Alzheimer's, but it's not. It's really stress, the first signs of stress. And so the last slide that I have here is then what do you do about it? Everything that we've heard from everybody so far fits into some general categories, which I would just emphasize. You know, physical care is really important. Think about the normal routines that you want to set before you're in high stress. But when you're going through a COVID-19 context through this time, you can't get out and maybe run the marathon in the same way. So how do you actually do things from within your own house or apartment so that you can still get that physical exercise? Make sure you get your sleep, make sure you eat well. And then afterwards, how do you re-engage those activities? Social support is key. If I could say the biggest bang for your buck, stay connected. In a time of social distancing, I would say we have to physical distance, but how do we intentionally stay socially connected? And I would say there's two things to really keep in mind. Identify good supportive people who are a part of your life. Make sure that when you go through these seasons of stress, you intentionally stay connected, because many of us pull away from our context out of stress. And I would say identify the good people and intentionally stay connected there. But also identify those people who might be a bit more stressful to you. And I'm not saying divorce them out of your life, but I am saying this is a good time to put some boundaries. You know, they may be the people in your family and maybe you can't get away from them all the time, but how do you, when they call you, maybe you don't pick the phone up on the first ring. Maybe you let it go to the second ring, and we're just putting controls in situations that are a little bit more demanding and stressful. Put controls in there. How do you just make sure that you're mindful that you're engaging in ways that you actually have some controls? Self-efficacy is basically how do you just do life? And I would say this is a time where you would not expect the same amount of output that you would normally be able to do. So give yourself time and space and maybe a little bit of a grace in terms of what you would expect to accomplish over the course of the day, because we can be in a high stress mode. And then meaning and purpose is the last. And that is basically whatever your larger frames are, whether it be spiritual, whether it be naturalistic, stay engaged with those. It helps us to make sense of really difficult times. It doesn't necessarily explain it away, but it helps us to grapple with it and put it into a frame. And that is what actually prevents traumatization. So with that, I'll pause. And if there's time for questions, I'll take it. But if not, please be well.
Could you please share the PowerPoint with us?
Absolutely. I'll send that right along.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. You know, does anybody have any questions? No. Oh, yes, Cindy. Absolutely. You're up.
Okay. I was going to ask you on that chart that you just had, what was the fourth chart title? Because I had my little photos on top of that. I couldn't see it.
Ah, gotcha. The title was Good Things to Do Before, During, and After Periods of Stress.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I was going to ask. I know I've heard different things. Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, I got you now. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, I hear you. We hear you.
We hear
I don't
you.
know what's happening.
Aaron, we got you.
Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Are there things that you can do, like as far as writing exercises that would be helpful? You know, and that kind of a mindset. What would you recommend for that?
Yes, absolutely. So under that column of meaning and purpose, so anything that moves you into a reflective space like journaling, or just being able to capture your feelings, I think can really be helpful in terms of just raising that self-awareness. And so journaling, obviously, people understand as, you know, writing about just, you know, your daily experience. But I would even add this. A lot of times we can have, so I'm a psychologist.
I'm sorry, I have to call you.
Well, so a lot of times we have things come up in our dreams a lot of times. And I would always recommend, if you find that you wake up out of your dreams during a period of high stress, it's not necessarily the dream content that I would say focus on, but what is the feeling that you have in that dream? The feeling of that dream can be complex. Try to understand all the intricacies and the dynamics of the feelings. Write those down, because those feelings that you experience in the dream typically are probably coming up because in the course of the day you have too much to deal with. And so it goes underground and it comes out when those defenses are down when you're asleep. That's a good way to understand what could really be going on in terms of how you're feeling. So try to write those feelings down, capture it, and then from there, maybe if there are times in your life previously where you felt those feelings, that's a good link to understand what's going on for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you.
Yes. So Wendy, are you there? I know, but let's make sure she can hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Okay, Wendy. So Wendy's bio is up there, and it's all yours, Wendy.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for that, Rick. I think that was really wonderful. And I think this concept of being aware of what's going on with us and when things are changing is so essential for us to be able to do something different about it. So I'm going to be sharing with everybody a little bit today about looking at it from the perspective of women and the topic of self-care, managing depression, anxiety, and feelings of isolation as it pertains to women. And one of the things that I think is so key to recognize is that women are 4 times more likely to suffer with depression and anxiety for several reasons. We know part of it is hormonal, biological, there's genetics involved, but there's also environmental and societal factors that play a significant role as to why women struggle so much. One of those things that are so key is a simple aspect of women always being portrayed or in the need to feel as superwomen. And so it's this concept of not being enough. And so if you are single, you're not married, so you're not enough. If you're married, you without child, you're not enough. If you have one child, when are you going to have the next child? You're not enough. If you are working, you still struggle with the inequalities of not being paid enough because you're not prepared to be, you're not seemingly equal as far as your male counterparts. So there's always this constant pressure and struggle of not being enough. And women were never really taught to set boundaries, and we're taught to be people pleasers. We're taught to just kind of go with the flow and kind of be quiet about it. And I think now, as you see a lot of with the feminist movement and Me Too and these things, it's kind of really the first time that women are actually sharing and speaking out about the things that are not happening or being considered fair. And so some of the things that I think it's so, in addition to the societal pressures of women having to deal with body image and being compared to models who are a size 2, who are airbrushed and look picture perfect. So again, it's another reason that women feel like they are not enough. And then when they have children, they may gain a little bit of weight. So now you have to struggle with weight and you're not enough. And so this is a constant storyline or constant narrative that women are struggling with. And where does it end? Where does it stop? And so even when you can be in a room full of people, or I know that we're in this isolation kind of thing, but even if when you're connected with people, it's hard a lot of the times for women to be what I like to call transparent. And in being transparent, you show up as your true self without necessarily having to be a people pleaser or saying or doing what you feel like it's going to make everybody in the room accept you. So this ideology of just self-acceptance and being okay and enough, who you are and what you're doing, and it's okay. It's okay if you're a stay-at-home mom. It's okay if you're a CEO at the organization. It's okay if you are both working and have children and doing both simultaneously. It shouldn't be a thing that a woman has to feel like I'm not enough. That in itself is problematic. And so some of the things that I like to suggest is, number one, it's the self-talk. And our self-talk, language in itself is so critical because the brain cannot process positive and negative at the same time. And so one of the things I teach my students, I'm also a professor, is this ideology of watching your language. And so quite often we'll say things like, I'm so overwhelmed right now. I'm just, oh, this is just too much for me to handle. So I say, why don't you try something different? Because especially when a woman says it at home, they're going to project it in the home, and the whole environment is going to feel anxious and overwhelmed. So I said, why don't you just say, you know what? We have to continually readjust. There's a lot going on. COVID is a perfect example. 1 minute mask is mandated. The next minute there's, indoor quarantine. And so we're constantly readjusting. We're not sure what's going to happen next, but we'll be okay. That takes a total different response to your body than even when you say, I'm so overwhelmed. Literally, those words will physiologically affect your body just because you said it. So language in itself is so critical. The other thing that's important is how you start off your day. And so daily mantras, and if you study athletes and a lot of the people who are Olympic winners and these kind of things, they're pretty big on how they start their day off. And this is so imperative, especially for women, because so many things are flooding you as soon as the sun rises. So this ideology of starting off your day saying, I am enough, I am beautiful, I am special, I am somebody. Right? And just coming up with your daily mantras every day. Today is going to be a great day. I'm healthy. I'm energetic. I'm filled with joy. Because whatever you say, you're conditioning yourself to believe it. So if you condition yourself to believe, here we go again. Oh, my life is not, I just wish this and I wish that. Then it's like, you're going to be doom and gloom by the time the sun rises, because you've already woken up with this mindset that today's going to be an awful day. And so setting the tone of your day is so critical, especially since when you have so many different things. And, science has shown us we can only make a certain amount of good decisions a day before we start making bad decisions. And women are prone to have to make so many decisions because they have to take care of home. They have to take care of self. They have to take care of the children. So guess who ends up being last on the list? The woman, right? And so the woman does very little self-care. And so I want to suggest not just only looking at your thoughts and what you're saying, but also just how to protect the psyche, how to protect the mind. Another way is just simply, we talked about it a little bit earlier, is just breathing. I like the 5-5-10 model. I'm not sure where I heard it. I may have changed it from 4-8. Whereas when you breathe, you just slow yourself down. You may not even have 5 minutes. You may have 1 minute. So even through science, we know just taking 3 deep breaths is enough to just kind of calm you in that moment. So I'd like us to do that right now. And I like the model 5-5-10. So you're going to inhale 5, count to 5 before you release, and release by 10. Okay, let's do it 3 times. Let's inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Even if you were anxious in that moment, just redirecting for a brief moment can be very, very calming. Now, if you can do that 5 minutes a day, that's fantastic. But even in doing it for 1 minute, it can just calm you in that moment. The other thing that I like to combat negative thoughts with is ask yourself some realistic questions. When I am dealing with clients, especially couples who they just can't see things from the same way, I like to slow them down and help them to realize, first of all, is what we're assuming or worrying about, is it fact or is it assumption? Is this something that you're assuming? And this is good for a time like now with COVID, hearing so many different things, doing fact checks and realizing which things are true or not. The other thing is this my perception or is this a reality? The next question is, what purpose is this serving me at this time? What am I getting out of this? And lastly, how is this helping me or hurting me? Sometimes we have to ask ourselves questions to kind of really see the path that we're on, because quite often people try to think that when I'm anxious, I can't control it, it just happens. So I like to ask people to repeat, I am in control of my thoughts and my actions. I am in control of my thoughts and my actions, because we can't give that control to someone else. We're in control of our thoughts and our actions. That's the first fact that we need to accept. And recognizing that we can't put it off of everything else. Oh, because of that, I'm anxious, or because of this, I'm anxious, or because of that. No, it's because we choose, we make a conscious decision to stay in that place because of what we're telling ourselves and because of what we're thinking. So when we deal with the fact that first we're in control, we have the ability to redirect ourselves. We know that there are all of these things that are coming at us, but you know what? I need to practice some level of self-care. And so we know that especially women with small children, it's going to be harder to exercise and do those kind of things, or to get to the gym. So I like to say YouTube can be your best friend. There are 5-minute workouts. There are 30-minute workouts. Sometimes you may only have 5 or 10 minutes when you put the kids down, or even in between assignments or whatever it is that you're doing working from home. Sometimes 5 minutes would be enough to just, again, give you a boost, right? So throughout the day, nature walks are wonderful. You can put the children in strollers and actually take nature walks. Both of you get fresh air. Both of you end up being in a better position, feeling a little less anxious, right? And we also want to recognize the importance of emotional intelligence. I'm pretty sure most of us are aware of it, but just just as a recap, this ideology of controlling our emotions, there's 5 areas, which is the ability to have self-awareness, where I think Dr. Rick was talking about that, the ability of knowing what's going on with you. Self-control, which is controlling your emotions, regulating and managing yourself. It's so key. And we just talked about that in the idea of managing your thoughts and your actions. Self-motivation, being able to not look for external things to motivate you, but realizing that even just the things you tell yourself can motivate you or deplete your energy, right? Empathy, which studies show that women obviously do a very good job with empathy, sometimes too much empathy, right? But being able to manage that. And social skills, which is staying connected, being in a position to recognize that I need other people to survive. But I like to again state that it's important to have safe people who accept you for who you are. Safe, supportive people where you don't have to show up and pretend and have a pseudo self, what we call, this surface self, and your real self, whereas you are pretending. You want to be able to show up and be just enough, right? And sometimes that means that you have to set boundaries and come up with what I like to call scripts. Come up with your scripts. Oh, when are you having the next baby? Well, we're not planning for that now, but when the time comes, we'll be the first to let you know. Instead of going home now feeling heavy because you feel not enough because somebody's pressuring you to have kids. When are you getting married? Oh, keep me in prayer. He'll come when he's supposed to come. So finding those scripts that will keep you from feeling like you're not enough, because then it spirals you out of control. You're stressed, you get depressed, and you're not enough. You have to continually remind yourself, I am enough. And finding safe people who will accept you to be enough is so, so critical and so important. And so you don't have to feel like, unless I'm doing, women need to practice a lot more just being. Because we naturally have this doing thing down pat. I got to do this, I got to do that. And we equate that with our identity. But doing and being are 2 different things. When you be, you can naturally just exist and be enough. And I think both men and women struggle with this, right? We know men with job titles and these kind of things and income related things may be a little different, more of external factors versus internal factors, but it's something that as humans we struggle with. Just this ideology that I'm not good enough unless or until. But we have to realize that just our mere existence is good enough for us to be here, for us to be able to take up space, for us to have a voice and a seat at the table. And what we have to say and do is just as relevant or as important, in spite of your degrees, in spite of your circles. You matter. You are that important. You are enough. And that's what we have for today.
Oh, thank you so
Oh
much.
my goodness.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wendy.
You're welcome. Any questions or comments?
Is your bio up there somewhere?
Yes, it's a little bit early. Do you want me to repost it, Pia?
No.
It's there.
I was supposed to speak earlier, but I was having some technical difficulty with my sound.
I see.
Yeah. What I'll do,
I can't find it though.
I'll send it to everybody on the email, the next email for next week. I'll send all the bios again to everybody in the email, to Word doc. Okay, so everybody can have it. But I'll post hers as well again. Is there any questions? Any questions at all? Well, I want to say I learned so much.
Yeah.
So, and you know, I love that. I am somebody.
You already know.
I mean, I know a man, but I just love that. I love that. I am somebody.
Okay.
All right. It's awesome. It's really great. Oh, Riku, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to know that how you feel when you as a woman think about all kinds of things that going on in the world, just like Chinese girls, and they had to marry and had child, and then they had to move to another country to live normal life. What do you think of that?
Well, so you mean like child marriage when women are like trafficking and these kind of things when they're taken against their will?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, those things are considered to be very, very traumatic. And there's a lot of PTSD that comes behind that because, as we know, it's an infringement upon your rights. And quite often they don't have much recourse in what they can do to be able to solve or change the situation. And so a lot of the times they need lots of therapy and lots of rebuilding, and because it's a loss of identity and a loss of self. And so it's a traumatic situation, obviously, even for family and loved ones involved, in just them being able to have a sense of identity of who they are. And so that often comes with a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder, and other mental health illnesses tend to come along with that, which is very unfortunate. It's very sad.
Thank you so much, Wendy.
You're
Thank
so
you.
I have a quick question. Can I ask?
Yeah.
Would you say that codependency is a female or a feminist issue?
Well, we know that it often tends to come up a lot with addiction, dealing with women trying to hold the family together. And so we know, if you look at like a lot of Al-Anon and a lot of the Nar-Anons, that women quite often have a savior, I like to call it a savior victim mentality, where they go in to try to save, and at the end they end up as a victim. Because they are depleting themselves of everything they have, trying to save like the addicted loved one or the child or whomever who have these kind of personality disorders or traits. And it's often they need professional help to be able to manage this situation. And so quite often that also goes back to trauma in early childhood, how things were happening when they were younger, and what was normal, because that may have been a normal practice that they've grown up with seeing mom and dad actually practice. And so they grow up with this ideology that that's the norm. So there's so many factors that we recognize. I haven't done the statistics to be able to see, but quite often my gut would tell me that women would probably more likely struggle with that, just because of the societal factors and the way everything is for women to be codependent and struggle with that and end up with mental health illness issues because of it.
Thank you so much, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Wendy.
One more speaker and that's it, okay? One more. hold on. I'm so, 1 second, let me get the stuff. So we're gonna Pastor Michael Kelly. Pastor, if you could put your video on, because somehow we don't see you. Oh, there you are. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I just want to welcome you, and it's all yours. And his link to his site is on the chat.
Awesome, awesome. I want to thank you guys for the opportunity. And I realize one of the keys to being the last speakers, you can either be super long or super short. But I'm going to make sure that we wrap this up. I know it's different time zones for everybody, but I just appreciate the opportunity to be a part of such a great group, to really talk about, this idea of self-care, which I think is huge, particularly during this particular time. And of course, as a pastor, they want me, of course, to deal with the idea of spirituality as self-care. And I first want to just talk about this to distinguish two different things I'm about to say. Spirituality isn't a thing that we do. It's actually who we are, right? Like that's really what it should be. This isn't a thing to say, oh, well, self-care, so let me add spirituality into my life. What we're hoping is for those who are, followers of Christ and those who, profess Christianity, that this is literally just a part of our everyday being. This is just the way that we would go about doing life and things like that. Not something that's compartmentalized to where, oh, I'm feeling bad, so now let me just sprinkle some spirituality on there. We want this to really be a part of our everyday existence. And the Bible, for example, really does speak on a lot of things on self-care. It says things under the idea that we really can't love somebody else until we learn, of course, to effectively love ourselves. Like, it's a huge part of loving others, is being able to first be able to love ourselves. And so one of the areas of self-care spiritually that I really want to hone in, and there's definitely a lot that we could get to, is really this idea of prayer. I think prayer is such an important component to our spirituality and our spiritual life that, unfortunately, I think it gets misconstrued and sometimes misused. And I'm going to break that down this way. In Matthew chapter 6, we see that Jesus is using a particular prayer to teach individuals how to pray. He's got this thing, some you have typically heard it be called the Lord's Prayer. And in this particular prayer, the disciples have come up to him and they're like, Jesus, can you teach us how to pray? And before Jesus gets to breaking down, our Father which art in heaven and all these different kinds of things, what we see is that Jesus starts to let them know that, hey, your heavenly Father does not want you to be anxious in life. He doesn't want you to worry. He doesn't want you to be concerned. He said, and here's the reason why. Because before you call, he's like, I've already got the answer. Whatever it is that you need, I've already got it laid out for you. Like, I've completely know what's going on in your life. I know what's happening. And so I want you to have the confidence to know that whatever it is that's taking place, whatever it is that's happening, I've already got it on lock. I've seen it before you've seen it. So don't be anxious. Don't worry. And you don't need to have a prayer that is full of repetition. Now, when you think about that, if you look at a lot of different Christians' prayer lives, and I'll tell you, even with me as a pastor, getting a lot of traffic coming my way for prayer, it's always during the way of prayer requests coming from, I'm sick, I need this, all this stuff is happening in my life, and I just need God to do something incredible about it. And so our prayer life is really consumed with God dealing with a lot of our problems. But notice what he said in that text in Matthew 6. He says, well, all of those things that you're anxious about, all the things that you have problems with, before you're actually coming to me with them, I want to let you know that I have need of those. So much so to the point that by you get to the end of Matthew chapter 6, he says, here's what I really want you to do. I want you to seek first the kingdom of God, all his righteousness, and then here's a promise I make to you. All those things that you're anxious about, all those things that you're worried about, I'm going to add them to you. So don't seek those things, seek me, and then I'll add the things that are making you anxious. I'll add the things that are causing you the stress, to take away the stress, to take away the anxiety. And so what I really thought about is most of our prayer life is consumed with asking God for his hand to move in our lives, but it's not really consumed with seeking his face. Just literally seeking out a wonderful day-by-day relationship and walk with God. And I take it back even to the Garden of Eden. If you think about it, Adam didn't need to spend time in prayer with God because he had face-to-face conversations with God. And in Eden, there is this perfect society that is set up where he doesn't come to God saying, God, I need food. God, heal me, because he's never sick. He never has any of those issues. So the majority of his time communicating with God is really about him just getting to know who God is. He's connecting with his Heavenly Father. He's getting to know him. God is pouring into him. He's pouring into God. And there's this excellent, just steady relationship that they have. Now you transport us into this society, in this world, and we do have issues, and we do have traumas, and we do have stress. And I unfortunately think that we spend most of our time connecting with God on these stressful moments, on these traumatic moments, on the healing that we need, on the prayer requests that we need answered, as opposed to really spending more time just really trying to connect with God himself, really just seeking his face, really just getting to know him for who he is. And I've found that in my own personal walk and experience with God, one of the greatest times that he and I have is not when I'm asking him for anything. It's not when I'm needing him to do something. It's not when I'm like, God, can you bless me here? Or can you bless this person here? It's actually where I'm like, God, show me your heart. Like, can you just let me know who you are? And as I get to know who you are, then I get to see who I am. As a matter of fact, it's that prayer in Psalms 139, search me, O God. See if there's any wicked thing within me, and then lead me in the path of righteousness for your name's sake. And so what I found is, when it comes to this idea of prayer, the greatest self-care that we can do when it comes to prayer, I really think is seeking the face of God. Because when you seek his face, he can't help but move his hand. And so because I know that he's got my needs on lock, me telling him in prayer is not like he's learning it for the first time. Me spending time going down a list of my needs and wants and stuff like that, God's like, yeah, I know that, because before it was a problem, I already had your answer. And so what I've learned to do during my prayer life is literally seek God himself. And I find that as I seek his face, he can't help but move his hand. And there are things that I haven't had to ask for that have come. There has been some anxiety and anxiousness around COVID-19 and what's been happening. But the more I sought his face, the less anxious I become. And I haven't spent time saying, God, I'm anxious for this and doing all those things. I just got to know who he is. And there's a peace, I think, that comes with knowing who God is in its spiritual realm. And so the first thing that I personally do for my own self-care is I'm spending time seeking the face of God, not asking him for a bunch of stuff, but honestly just seeking his face, knowing his heart and knowing his character. The second thing that has been a huge part of my self-care has honestly been the study of God's word. And notice I didn't say the reading of God's word, but I really said, the study of God's word. Now I take myself back to days in school. When my teacher would give me different assignments, notice they didn't try to give you, and maybe you get the same experience. I wasn't, told that within one day, I want you to learn the entire book, right? Like, you're not going to get the entire book. But what a teacher does is every single day throughout class, they're unfolding to you different things that build upon each other. So you're getting little chunks and little bits and pieces. And so just to let you know, part of the best way that I've learned to really engage in the word, and some people are like, man, you a pastor, you need to do more than that. But I don't try to read 5 or 6 or 7 chapters of the Bible a day. But most of the time, I'm really going into between, at the most, 1 or even half a chapter of scripture. And I'm spending that time really meditating on those small nuggets I'm able to get, because I find that the Bible is so rich with a lot of principles and practices that for me to try and read 5 or 6 or 7 chapters, I'm going to miss some stuff. Like there's a lot of meat in there. And so part of what my self-care is I'm really finding whatever book I might be studying, if it's the book of Romans, if it's one of the Gospels, like right now, I'm in the Gospel of John. I'm really just pouring into that. And I'm just sitting back and I'm absorbing a story at a time. If there's just one story within a chapter, I'm sitting back and I'm absorbing and I'm asking myself several questions. Number one, what is God trying to say to the people of this time? Because that's who he wrote, that's who the book is written for. And then number two, what is God trying to say to me? And then personally, and then number three, what is the application for 2020? We know that the Bible was written thousands of years ago. It didn't take internet into consideration. It didn't take a lot of things we're dealing with in consideration, but it's a timeless book. So I asked myself, how does this apply to my life in 2020? And so that's a big part of my self-care, just taking those small sections of scripture and being able to apply them to my life. And that has helped me tremendously. Then the third thing I do for self-care, and this might sound crazy, but I think one of the best ways for me to give self-care to myself is also by serving others. And so every single day I try and ask myself, how can I serve somebody else? I know it might be different in this COVID-19 and in the social distancing practice. And I also don't consider serving others my preaching. I don't consider serving others my work that I do at the church. I try and say, outside of me being a pastor, what can Michael Kelly do to help my neighbor? What can Michael Kelly do to help some of my friends? And so I don't get in pastor mode then. And sometimes my helping in this is, do you need some groceries? What can I go get for you? It's stopping when I see somebody on the street and literally asking them how they're doing, checking in on my neighbors. Because I find the more that I'm concerned with others, for some reason, that reminds me that my situation and my circumstance, number one, isn't as bad as I think. And then number two, I see that there are other people who are in the struggle with me. And so those are the three things spiritually that I do for self-care. I seek the face of God in prayer. I take some time to take the little chunks and nuggets of his word and just meditate on that for my session with him. And then I serve other people. And I find that when those three things are present in my everyday life, my stress levels go down, my anxiety levels go down. I'm actually physically healthier. I believe that my life has better organization to it because those three things have become a major part, the start of my day. And so that's what I'd love to challenge you guys to do if you're not already doing that. I know, maybe a lot of us, are already praying. Seek his face. You're already studying your Bible. Be a little more, focused on 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe 4 or 5 passages that you just meditate on. That's what Psalm says, thy word I meditate on day and night. And then serve other people. I know you got a lot of issues, but I think if you serve others, I think that would be a great blessing to you. So that's my talk on self-care and what I do spiritually. And I'd love to, if there are any questions, comments, or concerns, we'd love to take that at this time.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Is there any questions? Because this is our last one. We'll wrap it up. Riku, you got something. And Pia. Yes, Riku, you're up.
Okay. How do you find Old Testament? I tried to read some, but it's very deep, kind of very deep. And also difficult to sometimes to handle. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so the Old Testament can be a very difficult book, particularly depending on which ones you read. Like if you read the book of Leviticus, all these different laws and stuff like this are coming out of everywhere. So what I always tell people to do is the Old Testament is really filled with amazing stories. And so what I try to tell people to do is, some of these TV shows, like Game of Thrones is like a huge hit. And I always tease people and I say, hey, look, Game of Thrones and stuff like that is simply the book of 1st and 2nd Kings. These are stories about people's lives that we can try to learn and glean from. It's almost like the Bible is telling us, let me give you an inside look on people's lives so that you can see the mistakes they made, the successes they had, and you can start to apply some of those things and then tell yourself, these are some of the things I don't want to do based on how I've seen other people do it. So I always tell people, I think the stories are usually the best ones from the Old Testament. Read about how the nation was run in 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Read about, the Exodus and the stories about how Israel left, Egypt and made it into the promised land, because we can start to identify with their journey with our life's journey. So, some of the prophecy, the prophetic books might be a little too heavy, but the ones that are filled with stories, I think those are the ones that I always recommend people starting with from the Old Testament.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Suvi's going to close it out. We're going to, our host.
So, first of all, thank you all so much, all speakers. We got so many new ideas and thoughts about self-care, both mental and physical. So thanks. Thank you all very much. And next Monday we have this session, and it's 1 hour long. And then we will go over the music idea for festival and watch Kathrine's video, and then the watch party festival video. So we from last year festival, we're gonna watch that. And you are welcome there all. And please be part of our online festival in September, next September.
Yes.
But now I'm gonna hug my Miss Piggy, and you can all take care of yourself. And have a nice evening or have a nice day.
Oh, next host. We gotta find the next host. Marcus.
Oh, yeah, next host.
I think we should nominate Valhalla. Marcus, you're the next host. We just nominated you. All right.
Okay.
All right, everyone, please keep this up. This is going to be different every week. This is part of the September festival. So we need everyone to let their friends know about this. It's just a way for us to connect, way for us to create something different with, and anything kind of goes. So please come next week on Monday, and thank you all.